We have candidates lined up today here on the program. We start off with Dr. Donald May in studio, running for
morning.
Texas 19. Welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure to be here, sir. Thank you for inviting me back.
Well, absolutely. How's the campaign going for you?
Campaign is going absolutely great. Lots of issues out there. You and John brought up one of the issues that's coming up is, of course, Scalia's passing.
Right.
And this enhances the importance of the Congress, because Congress, the House, the Senate, and then the president himself in signing off bills need to understand the constitutionality of what they're doing. They need to quit depending on the Supreme Court to rule on their writings. And as John Cornyn brought up, we need to wait to appoint somebody until we get the new president in. This is one of the many instances where the government simply needs to stop some of the things it's doing. It needs to slow down some of the things they're doing. Slowing down, stopping is not a bad thing. It's just like immigration. Right now, we need to slow down or stop immigration into this country until we can get our borders fixed, until we can determine who's coming in here, because we have the inability of screening people. So slowing down, stopping the government, stopping some things that the government's wildly doing is not always a bad thing. It's usually a good thing.
Let me ask you something. Should there be term limits on Supreme Court justices?
The Constitution says they're appointed for life.
Right.
It comes down upon the Congress to determine if they're fit to continue on. If they are not fit in what they're doing as justices and they're subverting the law, they can be impeached and removed. The president or the Senate can advise them to step down. And again, if they're not doing their job, the Congress, by a vote of 50% plus one, can simply remove them, just like they can remove the president and vice president. That's a good thing to debate. So far, we haven't seen major problems in people staying on pretty much their entire life.
So you're okay with the way it is right now?
I'm not necessarily okay. I think it's something that should be an ongoing debate. But so far, we have not seen problematic there. Other than from the political point of view. Yes, I would like to see the 4 liberal and the 1 moderate judge retire early or have term limits. It's just like I'd like to see Democrats not carry guns, because all the mass shootings are done by Democrats, most of whom are atheists. But that's not the way our system works. That's not the way our representative republic works.
Let me ask you, speaking of term limits, you've come out, I believe, in favor of term limits, correct?
I think term limits are important. George Washington set the precedent for president. He only wanted to serve 1 term, but he acquiesced and served 2 terms, and he said that was enough. And, of course, when FDR was in and served 4 terms, it was the Democrats who quickly pushed through the amendment to limit that. I think we need term limits simply so we get people are representative. Back when our country started, and as the Constitution lays out in Article 1, Congress comes to session in early December. They finish their work for the year and go home in time to be home for Christmas Eve. And that's the guy on his horse getting down to South Carolina and South Georgia. So they were in session for 2.5 weeks maybe. And that was all they did. They handled the business of the government, which was specifically defending the people, defending the state. They weren't involved in Congress. They weren't involved in harassing and hassling the people. So I think what we need to do is term limits so we get people up there. They have a limited time to get things done, so they get down and they get things done. They're not sitting up there. They're not letting the lobbyists write the bills. What is really appalling up there is lobbyists bring the bills to the people in the House, and the lobbyists write the bill. That's just absurd. And a limited amount of time up there.
So if elected, how long would you like to serve?
I would like to serve long enough to get some significant changes going.
How's that? How long is that?
That would probably be about 3 to 5 terms.
Okay.
But ideally, what I'd like to see, Chad, is I'd like to see people go up there for 3 terms, come home for 3 terms minimum, and then if they are reelected or want to go back, they can go back to the House for another 3 terms as a senior person. Same thing in the Senate. Go up for 2 sessions, mandatorily sit out one session, go back up for another session. If you want to do something else, you want to be vice president, want to be an ambassador, that's fine.
I've asked other candidates this question. I'll ask you the same one, and it's about term limits. And then we'll move on to some different issues that are out there. But it dovetails into another issue, I guess. When I was listening to a town hall forum, and it was with Marco Rubio, who's running for president, and he laid out, look, Congress is never going to vote for term limits. It's just never going to happen.
They're not.
You have to get a convention of states. And he's endorsed convention of states. Governor Abbott obviously has come out in favor of convention of states. Where do you stand on that?
The Convention of States, the second part of Article 5, was put in there as basically a backup by the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution. So if the Congress and the government got so out of control and so left the Constitution that the states can come in there and correct it. Mm-hmm. Again, this is writing amendments. This is not rewriting the Constitution. There are absolutely no provisions in there for rewriting the Constitution. All they can do is amend it, and then it has to be approved by 3/4 of the state. It would be no different than if in Obama's first year in office that the highly Democrat House, Senate, and he had the House and Senate had written amendments, and they were wildly left. The states wouldn't approve it. So the fail-safe is in there is the states approving it. And this is the only way we're going to get term limits. This is the only way that we're going to get government under relative control. This is the only way we're going to get the budget under control. And this is probably the only way that we're going to get health care, welfare, and education out of the federal government and back to the states where under the 10th Amendment it belongs anywhere.
So you're all for it?
I am all for it, but I'm also all for getting back the appointment of the senators by the individual states. We are not a democracy. We are a representative republic. And when the senators were voted by the people, that took the power away from the states. The only thing that the states really have left right now is the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. They don't have the control over the Congress as they did in the past.
We're visiting with Dr. Donald May in studio, discussing his campaign for Texas 19. We'll take the break. When we come back, we will. If you have a question for Donald May, feel free to give us a call, 770-5790. Toll free 1-800-687-0790. We've also got other issues facing the United States and possibly facing Congress to talk about when we come back. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. We're in studio with Dr. Donald May, who is running for Texas 19, looking to replace Congressman Randy Nagelbauer. And you were one of the candidates, I think there were a couple, that had a press release after the whole controversy with one of your opponents, Colonel Starr. It came out. You at least you spoke to the media and gave your opinion on the whole controversy. Tell our listeners if it's something, because the Abilene Reporter News, they had an editorial yesterday saying, this is not a big deal. You know, people don't need to look at this. This is not something people should care about. I had on another one of your opponents on yesterday who said, it is relevant to this race. What are your feelings on it?
Well, I try to keep away from issues of the other candidates, but I do have strong feelings about sex in the workplace. I don't think that there should be sexual activity or sexual promotion in the workplace. I don't think that the president and the politicians and the bureaucrats should be using our military to promote societal change, our perception of sexual activities that's going on in the country. That should not be a platform for promoting liberal issues. The job of our military is to wage war and to be so powerful that none of our enemies, ISIS, China, whoever, will ever consider attacking us, and that we'll live in peace. Because the only way to live in peace is if we've got a military that's secondary to none. So I do not believe that the military is an appropriate place for such activities, whether it be promoting homosexual marriage or LGBT or whatever. I understand that it's possible that this was mandated that people could do this. The base commander has the ability to choose whether or not to participate, mm-hmm. and you can go ahead and show support for your troops. The decision is whether you become actively engaged.
Visiting with Dr. Donald May. Let's say you're elected. You get to go. You get to go to Washington D.C. What are the top 3 issues that you would like to tackle immediately that, and maybe one of them isn't something that's front page news, right now, or not in the spotlight right now?
Well, one thing that really matters, Chad, if we're dead, nothing else matters. So national security has to be absolutely number one. We need to secure our border by all means possible, getting our military down there, augmenting our border patrol with actual military flyovers and such. Basically, as we said earlier in the show, slowing down or totally stopping immigration at this time, making sure that everybody coming into this country is adequately screened so we cut the possibility of ISIS down as much as possible. So border security equals national security, getting our military back up in order, and basically then, and in parallel, getting our economy in order. We can do all of those at one time. And the economy, basically what we need to do is get the government incrementally out of areas it doesn't belong. That includes health care, that includes welfare administration, that includes education. All of those belong back in the community of Lubbock, Abilene, under the state of Texas. If you and I had auto insurance that was administered by the federal government, we'd be paying 10 or 20 times as much. You know that, and I know that. And I have policies in multiple states. They're all under USAA, and I can move them freely, even though each is administered by a different state. You should do that with the same thing with health care. You buy a policy, you change jobs, you keep the policy. Along with that, we need to cut taxes. We need to cut corporate taxes. We've had another large company of over 2,000 people move down to Mexico. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. We should be getting that down to about 10 or 15%. We should cut taxes overall, and we'll get the economy coming back like gangbusters.
Visiting with Dr. Donald May here in studio, discussing his race for Texas 19. Let me ask you about compromise, because you hear this a lot out there, and even in this race, there's been a discussion before, I think, about what real leadership looks like.
Absolutely.
When to, I guess, negotiate, when to compromise versus when to take a hard line, put your foot down and say, I'm not going to agree with the Democrats or moderate Republicans or whoever may be out there that you don't agree with. So where do you draw that line as far as working with the other side or people that you may not always agree with?
Well, we have to have working relationships with the other side. The statement is know your enemy well. Know the people, know what the other people are thinking, and they don't necessarily have to be an enemy. I've debated for the last 2.5 years with Arnold Lowy at the law school. He's considered the number one legal authority on the First and 14th Amendment, and I was picked to be the conservative part of that. He and I disagree on the Constitution. We disagree on the interpretation. We're best of friends. I appreciate no understanding how the left thinks. But we've gotten into trouble in this country. The reason the government's in so much trouble is because the Republicans, the cowardly Republicans, have gone along, they've reached across the aisle, and every time they compromise, every time they strike a deal with the Democrats, we've moved the country to the left. We've moved the Republican Party as far to the left of the Democrat Party of JFK. We've moved so far to the left. We need to start looking at what we're going to do in the country. And my view of the Congress is the Congress now needs to busy itself with passing bills, small bills, to incrementally get the government out of things it doesn't belong in. It has its hand and fingers in every pie in the country. The EPA coming and telling people a stream going through their cow pasture what they can do with it. That's not a navigable waterway, nor is a stock pond in my field. Get the government out, incrementally get the government out, incrementally take away laws that are bad, incrementally get rid of bad regulations, get rid of most of the EPA, size down the IRS, get ourselves a flat tax, and impeach the judges who are legislating from the bench. We talked about judges before. Mm-hmm. If somebody is legislating from the bench, not interpreting the law and applying the law, but creating the law, they need to be impeached. That's the job of Congress. The Republicans have fallen down on the job in doing that. They're afraid to do that. They're afraid to do anything. They said, give us the House. We'll stop Obama. We gave him the House. Well, now we need the Senate. We gave him the Senate. Oh, gosh, we can't do that. We got to get a new president. There's the problem, Chad. Republican cowardice is the single biggest problem we have. Reaching across the aisle, working with people is fine, but you have to draw the line on moving the agenda to the left.
If the next president comes to you and being a freshman, this probably would not happen. But let's say the next president comes to you and says, I want you to draft immigration policy. What would it look like under your plan?
I'm hoping that happens. I'm going to hit the ground on day one, and I'm looking forward to working with President Cruz. I'm going to hit the ground running in the House just like he did. I know the people up there. I've been working with the people at Hillsdale and the Heritage Foundation, as you know, for the last 15 years. I'm going to have bills in progress before I get up there. I'm going to be spending the summer and the fall meeting with people, in the early winter meeting with people, getting things done. When I hit the ground running, I'm going to have my portfolio full of things to do. And yes, I plan to be introducing bills as a freshman.
So what's the plan for the border?
What's the plan for the border? First of all, we have to secure the border. That means getting military troops down on the border. That means getting more people down on the border. That means no catch and release. You catch somebody, you take them back across the border. That means getting the criminals in this country, locking them up here, executing them, sending them back home. And it means zero tolerance for people coming back. You go out of the country, you come back, you're in big trouble. And first of all, we have to secure the border. As I said before, we have to slow down or stop immigration until we get this under control. And we've done that before. We did that for almost 60 years after World War I. We had almost no immigration coming into this country until almost the 1960s. And we need to slow it down until we can figure out what's going on. We need to be able to let good people come in here to work. There's no problem with bringing in migrant workers. We simply need to know who they are. They need to come in here. We need to know where they are, who they are, and we need to make sure they're protected and not taken advantage of.
Those who are here illegally right now, what do you do with those who, let's say, have not committed and broken any other law other than coming into this country illegally?
Well, that's a distinction we need to make. We need to figure out who's the criminals and who are not. There are many good people who have been here for a couple of generations. They've got jobs. They've got kids. What we need to do is put together a program where people like that can become legal residents or equivalent to a green card. They can stay here. They can work. They're not entitled to all of the benefits of a citizen, and they can't vote. But they can stay here if they're good people and if they're contributing to society.
Real quickly, here in about 30 seconds, tell people why they need to vote for you and where they can find you online.
You can find me online at mayfortexas.com. I am the conservative in this race. I'm the only one with a history of conservative accomplishment. As you know, I've written several thousand position papers on politics. I've debated Arnold Lowy for the last 2.5 years. You can find it online. I'm the only person in the race who's ever bothered to involve themselves in politics. I'm the only one who's ever been a delegate to the state convention, the national convention, or locally.
Thank you very much.